Hello. In today's exercise, we're going to load the Chinook database and learn the basics of using the MySQL Workbench application. From the Apple icon, select System Preferences, and we're going to go in and make sure that MySQL, the SQL Server application, is working. From there, look to see if it's stopped and press Start MySQL Server. Once that you see that the server itself is running, we are okay to get started now. Now from the Start menu, let's go through and let's select MySQL Workbench. Notice that under MySQL connections I have one connection listed, and that is the local instance 3306. You may have a different number there besides 3306. The system is now prompting you for a root password, which you should have captured on installation of MySQL Workbench. Now MySQL Workbench comes up, and we'll notice immediately that MySQL Workbench has three distinct areas. There is the management area, which we'll talk more about later, and then we have the results area at the bottom, and that'll tell us it'll return any result sets that we've created, and it'll also tell us if there are any error messages. Then we have the area in the center which we can type into, and that is the text area. Okay, next thing that we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and we're going to load the commands to create the Chinook database. So what I want you to do is click on the folder icon to go ahead and search for the Chinook database. Now in an earlier exercise we went ahead and we downloaded the Chinook database. I want you to go to that location and find the Chinook MySQL SQL file and double click on that to open it. Okay, the commands for creating the Chinook database now appear in my text area. And the first thing that I'll notice is that I've got the gray areas, and I have areas where I see blue and black mixed together. The gray areas are comment areas. And what I want you to notice immediately about the comment areas is that they all start with a slash asterisk, and they all end with a star asterisk slash. This is common in programming that we annotate or we put comments in our code to tell us what that code segment is doing. And we'll notice that as you scroll up and down that we'll see that there's quite a bit of code here in order for creating it. So let's go ahead and let's look at the first area that's highlighted in the aqua blue, because that's the area that we're first going to execute. And before I start to create or install the Chinook database, let's make sure that the Chinook database doesn't already exist on our MySQL server, and we'll do this by dropping the database. Okay, so now we're going to go and execute our first SQL statement. Our first statement is to go ahead and drop the Chinook database. And to do that, we're going to highlight the statement. And once it's highlighted, beginning to end, we're going to go ahead and hit the execute button. Notice in the management section under schemas, as soon as we hit the execute button, that the Chinook database disappeared. And we'll see in the results section below that it says drop database if exists Chinook, and it says one row effective. I want you to notice that at the end of the statement is a semicolon. That indicates in SQL syntax that we are at the end of an executable statement. Each and every executable statement should end in a semicolon. Next, we're going to create the Chinook database. And if after dropping it, we notice that it no longer exists, and now I want to go ahead and create a blank Chinook database. We highlight the Create Database command, and we go ahead and we press our lightning bolt to execute again. Refreshing our schema, we now see that the Chinook database exists. I'm going to go ahead and now highlight Use Chinook and hit the execute. What this will do is will bring the MySQL Workbench's attention to the Chinook database, and we'll see underneath it that we see different objects shown: tables, views, stored procedures, and functions. We'll talk more about these in later assignments. Our next activity here is we're going to create the tables or individual areas for housing our data that we want to store in our Chinook database. In order to do that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to highlight all of the SQL statements in between the two comment areas, create tables, and the comment area below. Notice again that we're highlighting multiple statements, each ending with a semicolon. So we see we highlighted down to the create primary key unique indexes. Go ahead and press your execute button, and we'll see below in the results window that each table has gone and been created. We'll hit refresh again, and we'll see now that under tables there's more detail, and we can go ahead and click on that icon and we can show that our individual tables have been created. Notice how the MySQL Workbench application displays the Chinook databases around Cylinder, and underneath that database are tables which are represented similar to Excel spreadsheets. So each table is a holding place for data underneath the table's icon, and that is also underneath the Chinook database. Notice that underneath each of the create tables there is a lot of code which is going to define each table. We'll talk about this in much more detail later, so we're not going to get into it right here. The next code segment that we're going to execute configures our tables for use in MySQL. I'm not going to go into the detail here because, again, later we'll talk about this much more in later exercises. But I want you to highlight all the code starting with the alter table down to the next comment section. So let's go ahead and highlight that area. Okay, once we reach the next comment section, we're going to go ahead and we'll press the execute button. And notice in the results section it tells us that this got created successfully. All right, our tables are set up. They're ready for use. Our next exercise is to go ahead and put data into those tables. So let's go ahead and we're going to highlight all of the insert rows. And this is from below the next comment section all the way to the end of our text area. So there's quite a few rows here. Let's make sure we highlight them all and then press execute. Because we're creating many rows, this is going to take us a little while to execute. And I notice that the timing scroll is active and showing us that we're now executing our statements. And if we look in the results area, we'll see that we're inserting rows into our tables. Once the action's completed, the scrolling will stop, and I know that my execution has finished. And congratulations, you now have a working database with data in all of your tables. So let's see if our database got installed correctly. We want to now create a SQL statement or command that's going to return data from one of our tables. We want to click into the text area just below the insert commands and leave a couple of lines. Type in the following commands just the same way that I've done here. Use space Chinook semicolon. Hit enter a couple of times to leave a line. Then type in select asterisk from album semicolon. Now highlight both rows and hit the execute button. The result window will come up listing all the contents of the album table. And we'll see we've got quite a few items in that table. This verifies that my table has been loaded correctly. This is the end of this exercise. Thank you.